Hi, welcome to today's community chat. We're here with Natalia de los Ríos. She is the founder of Food Rescue US Virginia Beach, and she recently won this year's 2023 Stephen J. Brady Hunger Scholars Award from Sodexo Stop Hunger Foundation. We're going to be speaking with her today about how she got started, what this award recognition means, and, more about what food rescue is and what that does for the community. So Natalia is actually in the studio with us today, and we're going to be talking about, all of, really what you've done over the last, has it been 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah.
And I think one of the unique parts that we'll get into is she started this right before the pandemic, so the timing could not have been, more necessary for Virginia Beach. But first, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? You just graduated from high school. You got started. Just tell us a little bit about who Natalia is.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I just graduated from Princess Anne High School, in the IB program and also the Environmental Studies program at the Brock Center. Big shout out to both of those. Now I'm off to college, but really I started this in my 9th grade year. It started kind of as my personal project for the IB program, but it evolved into so much more very quickly, because originally I just wanted to start a chapter of food rescue after seeing a lot of food waste in my local grocery store. I had researched the issue, and I kind of came across Food Rescue US, and I thought, oh, this could be a cool thing for a school club, because there's always students that want driving hours, and they want volunteer hours. And so if there's a way to volunteer where you can pick up excess food and then just drive it to food organizations, that would be an awesome thing for high schoolers. But then upon looking more at Food Rescue, I saw that the nearest chapter was in Northern Virginia. And so that's when I kind of started the Virginia Beach chapter with my mom. We co-direct it. And then from there, a month later, the pandemic started, and we got the opportunity to get USDA Farmers to Families food boxes. And so from there, it just kind of grew exponentially.
Absolutely.
It was just so much more volume. It was 2 truckloads a week, semi-trucks a week. And so we were meeting a lot more people from the public, a lot more volunteers. A lot of them were high schoolers. And a ton more recipient organizations, and just people who are caring for their neighbors or picking up for housing facilities in the area. And we just kind of grew our little food rescue network a lot faster than we thought, I guess.
Well, the need was so high, but we also have to talk about, it's probably so disruptive for you as well. You're a high school student, you're going through classes, and you're also now in a position where you're really at school from home, and then you're also starting up effectively a business that has a major need here. What was that like?
I'm definitely glad I had my mom because we kind of balance each other out, because I would have a Zoom class and be multitasking and doing a sign up genius for the next food distribution or something. It was just it was a very unique circumstance, I would say, and it kind of allowed me, I guess, to have more flexibility and be able to handle more food rescue responsibilities. And then when I had responsibilities for school, my mom could always pick up the slack, and so it was a very nice dynamic. And we were both at home because she also her job's in education, so she was also affected by the pandemic, and so that allowed us to, I guess, kind of multitask and be a lot more flexible and be able to build it a lot faster, I think.
And, unlike food banks, this is food rescue. So can you explain, what that means and what that process is?
Yeah, so the basic premise of food rescue is kind of, you can think of it like a DoorDash, but for excess food. So restaurants or grocery stores or farms, they will have excess food at the end of the day, or excess ingredients, excess sandwiches or whatever, and we will pick it up from them, and we drive it directly to our recipient organizations. So that could be a food pantry, or it could be a subsidized housing facility, or a homeless shelter, or some kind of community kitchen or community group. So we're kind of just the link between the two, the excess food and the people serving the food insecure populations in the area. And so it's kind of, we're just the delivery people.
Right. But no, what an important, channel to have, because I think people look at food at the grocery store that, potentially could go bad, at least for the store's sake of when they're allowed to sell it for a restaurant food that is remain. That is can you tell us, like, how much waste is that? I mean, that must be a ton that usually without organizations like you would really just go to waste.
Well, it really depends on, like, the business, but some can be, like, hundreds of pounds of, like, bagels every night. Or it could be, like, 100 sandwiches. Or it could be, like, a farm that has, like, a whole carload of, like, produce at the end of their season or more. Like, we've gotten, like, tractor trailers of, like, sweet potatoes. So it can depend on so many things. Like, a lot of times at the end of shifts, they'll have excess food that they can't, like, save for the next shift.
Right.
Or grocery stores will have food, like, that meets their best by date, and then at that point they can't sell it, but they also don't want to throw it away because the best by dates are, like, they don't, 90% of them aren't, like, regulated by the government, and they're just saying to measure freshness. And so the food's still good, but they are not able to sell it, or at least sell it
because it has that date on the packaging.
Yeah, and there's, like, a mental kind of stigma with that. And so that's where food rescue really comes in, and we're there to, like, pick up that food and make sure it's still going to people and not to the landfill, because we put so many, like, resources and time and effort and money and all this stuff into creating this food, but then so much of it, like 40%, goes to the landfill when it should be going to the people in the community that need it. Like, it's kind of crazy that there's, like, farms, like, 30 minutes away from food apartheids in our area, and there's, like, some areas with, like, 10 grocery stores and some areas with no grocery stores. And so it's, like, trying to be that, like, Band-Aid of, like, the immediate fix for, like, food insecurity and food waste, making sure that people can get food that same day that might have gone to waste otherwise. But then I think we also need to be turning more attention to, like, the long-term solutions as well. So things like policy, investment in, like, infrastructure to have more sustainable food systems, more equitable food systems too. But definitely there's still that immediate need. There's people every single day that are food insecure, that don't have a meal for dinner, that are going to bed hungry. And so there's that immediate piece that like I think food rescue really comes in to, like, help with. And then there's, like, the long-term things that we need to be, like, also addressing at the same time.
Right. And I mean, some food banks right now really have empty shelves. Like, that's been a big problem that, you know, we've really reported on throughout the summer, and even with SNAP benefits changing in, like, the later part of the spring. But, you know, what you're talking about, you make it sound simple, but that's a really big effort to figure out, you know, transportation, the connection between the partnerships and getting it to the people after work. I mean, what is that process like? I mean, I read how many partnerships you've developed over the last years and how many agencies you work with, but can you just share, I mean, how many people are you really partnering with to make this happen?
Oh, like, I guess hundreds.
Yeah.
Like, cause, like, there's so many, like, we'll just, like, reach out to, like, restaurants or, like, DM, like, farms and things like that. Social media really helps, I think, with that outreach piece. And then a lot of times, like, it spreads from word of mouth. Like, one restaurant will recommend another one that they know has excess. And so we'll kind of, like, build that piece like that, or we'll just, like, show up and, like, say, hey, what do you do with your excess food? And then there's also, like, the recipient organization piece, which we've also kind of, like, cold emailed a lot. And then also, I think with that more, it really spreads by word of mouth, because there's, like, an invisible, like, network of people doing just, like, amazing things and caring about the other people in the community. And they're, like, connected to organizations that you might not, like, hear about just, like, browsing the internet or something. And so we've definitely got a lot more partnerships that way, like, just working with one group and then they know, like, a bunch of other groups, and so we work with them, and so it just kind of, like, spreads
Spirals,
like that. Yeah.
And then you sort of brought up policy, but you've actually gone to help, you know, try to change or influence policy, right? I mean, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so along with a couple classmates of mine, we co-wrote 2 bills. The first one was expanding liability protection for food past the best by date for food donations. So that's essentially, like, if a grocery store has a bunch of sandwiches that are right at that date and they can't sell them, but they don't want to throw them away and they want to donate them. Before, there wasn't really anything in the food donation laws that, like, explicitly said they're protected, they can't get sued. And so a lot of them would just throw it away because, I mean, their business is their priority and they're not going to take any risks. Right. So now we just made sure we had that language in there. And so that's helping a lot more food get donated. And then the other bill that we did this year was expanding and renewing a tax incentive for farms donating their excess food. And so that's really making sure that, especially our local farms, small farms, are getting financial support to make, like, the sustainable kind of community-oriented like choices with their like food, especially when they have excess food. So it's making it profitable for them to donate it and give it back to the community instead of to just let it like rot on the field, which a lot of times, like if they don't have those incentives, it can be a lot more profitable to just let it like lay on the field and rot and kind of like plow it over. But we're trying to just give that extra support so that they're able to harvest it and put the time and energy into getting it out back into the community.
And we're in a unique area here because we do have a lot of farms, as you mentioned. So is that where you sort of got some of these ideas to develop the policy, or have you really been looking at what's been happening across the country? I know that farming has been a big conversation, but you know, where did you guys start researching this idea?
So definitely from the farms that we work with, because we work with a lot of small local farms. Like actually today we're about to pick up produce from one. And so it's just hearing the things that they're saying about like how it just doesn't make sense that it's more profitable to leave it on the field than to harvest it and give it to people. And so from there we kind of researched and we came across a lot of like policy guides and resources. And we looked at what other states were doing. Like ReFed has a really good tool where you can look at the policies in other states on different areas of like food legislation. And so we kind of like used that and we saw what their successes were and what areas that might be like needing to improve for Virginia. And so we kind of brought that back here and combined it into like a one pager that we brought out to all like the legislators and everything. So definitely like direct like input from the farms we work with, and then also taking that and looking at what other states have done and using like online policy kind of guides and things like that.
Absolutely. And then, you know, moving forward, sort of, you talk about this piece of waste, and then you've also talked about this environmental piece. I mean, just in terms of going, you know, being more green minded, especially with businesses, and you're talking about, you know, farmers maybe working more locally, you know, to source some of this food after they've, you know, produced it. I mean, how important is that aspect of it as well?
Incredibly important, because so many of the issues that we're going to be facing and that we currently face with food insecurity are directly tied to the environment and like climate change, and how their farmers are facing a lot more issues now with like their yields and diseases and things like that because of like the unstable climate and the flooding and all these other issues. And so food waste contributes enormously to greenhouse gas emissions, because when food rots on the landfill, it emits methane. And so that is kind of like building up in the atmosphere, and it's causing a lot of these environmental issues. They're causing lower yields. They're causing less food for the people in the community to have. And so that environmental piece definitely plays, and it like ties directly to the social piece, because without consideration for the environment and how we can make our economy more profitable to be sustainable, then if we don't do that, we're not going to have access for food for everybody. And right now, we're producing enough that could be going to people, but we're wasting so much of it too because of like our policies, because of corporate policies, government policies, things like that. And so this food that could be going to people is actually getting wasted because it's just it makes more economic sense that way. And so we need to be shaping like our corporations, our economy, our policies, so that it is profitable to be environmentally focused, instead of to do the opposite and just let it contribute more to this issue by throwing it into the landfill.
Right. So like distribution really across the board is such a problem. So it costs more money for farms to actually give their unused goods to people. It wastes money from restaurants who, you know, they don't have someone to pick up their food, and you all serve as that, you know, conduit, I guess, to make a lot of this happen, right? So you're sort of helping a lot of people at the same time.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would like to see is to see that connection be more like concrete instead of relying like on like a nonprofit or like an individual or somebody to be there. I think we need to have a more because there's so many groups like working like just like individually and separately throughout Hampton Roads, and we've been able to meet a lot of them, but like there's just so many more. And if we could have kind of like a cohesive effort together, I think, and have that kind of like facilitated by like some kind of like government program or something, I think it would make it a lot more like sustainable in terms of like withstanding time.
Right.
And so making sure that every business like has a plan for their excess food, and that every citizen in Hampton Roads has a meal for that day, you know, or 3 meals for that day. Like, it's just making it so it's not relying on like donations, that it's actually built into like our communities, that we have these like networks and these systems for people. And I think, but for now, I mean, it's like building up that network through like nonprofit and like grassroots kind of organizing.
Right. And then you were in high school when you started this, and then you went through the pandemic, but now you've graduated. I mean, do you recommend other young people to help you out? I think you've talked about volunteers that you have. I mean, who is a part of your staff? Are they local? Are they, you know, students with you?
Yeah, so our food rescue, like, I think especially for the food boxes, there's a lot of, like, high schoolers, because we wanted to, like, do something and also kind of be, like, social, but in a safe way and in a productive way, because everyone was, like, at home, and so we just wanted, like, a chance to do something good and to do something, like, out in the world, I think. And so that's when we got, like, a lot of, like, high school volunteers, like, my classmates and people that they knew, and it just kind of spread that way. And then also we have a lot of like elderly or like retired people doing food rescues, because it's just like a great way to stay connected in the community, and to kind of like get outside of your like normal bubble, I'd say.
Yeah.
And then just like other, I don't know, just random people in the community that just came across it, and just really wanted to get involved in our like food rescuing every week now. And so it's like a big variety of people, and I think that's one of the great things about it, is that it's so like it's not like one type of person that can be a food rescuer. It's something so like simple and like easy to do. Like, you just have to deliver it from point A to point B, but it's also really impactful, because that means that food is not getting wasted and that somebody is getting food, and you're that person making that difference. And so I think it's really great to also be able to interact with like the businesses donating the food, because you see firsthand like the food waste that there is, and you become a lot more conscious of that. But also being able to like interact and talk with the recipient organization, like the pantry director or somebody organizing it for their housing facility, like food distributions, because then you hear about the food insecurity and how that's impacting people that could be 10 minutes down the road from your house or 5 minutes, you know. So it's just meeting so many people, making so many connections, and also seeing the issues firsthand, which I think any young person, any person really, I would love to have you join us.
And then, you know, it's one thing to join an organization, to be volunteer and help out, but you actually developed one, and it was a part of Food Rescue US, but, you know, that takes a lot of work from the ground up. I mean, not every high school student is doing that, and I think that's probably one of the reasons, right, that you were awarded this, you know, honor from Sodexo. But can you just talk a little bit about like what you would recommend to other high school students that maybe see an issue, whether it's food waste, whether it's, you know, helping out in environmental issues, whether it's helping out in social issues in your community? Like, how do you even get started in this?
I think I definitely recommend, like, what I did was just like cold emailing. Like, if you see an issue, research it and see if anybody is already like in the community doing this kind of work. Or could like benefit you if you wanted to start it in this community. And I think having that initial like partnership or that initial person to help guide you is really beneficial. So if you see anybody like in a space addressing an issue you also want to address, I say just cold email them. And like, because I was like, I think 16 at the time, and I did not expect them to even answer me, much less like let me do this. And so I think people can really surprise you in that sense. And I think just gather like-minded peers, classmates, family members, friends, somebody to like go along with you in this, I think really helps as well, because they can support you. And when you may be busier, they can help pick up for you, and vice versa. I think it's really helpful to at least have like one partner with you. And then also I'd say anything you do connect, like everything has a connection to policy. And one of like the biggest things that I've seen is like just how much like the legislators rely on people to like bring up issues and to inform them on like things that could change for the better in terms of like our legislation, especially on the state level. And they just rely so much on like input, because they're like, the legislators are having to address like 100 different issues. They're not the experts on everything, you are. So I think if you come to them with research and experience and all that and passion, you can definitely like always tie whatever you're passionate about to policy. And I think that's a really effective way to like multitask and like short and long term kind of addressing issues.
And that's interesting because you've made so much progress obviously now, but when you got started, you were thinking, as you just said, I'm just a kid. I don't know if they're going to respond to me. I mean, if people are sitting back and they're saying, the adults are going to handle this, I'm just going to, I'll volunteer, I'll stay at school and just figure it out. I mean, what would you say to somebody that, maybe is just waiting for someone else to do it?
I'd say, I think you just have to get immersed in it and see it firsthand, and then at that point you can't really stand back. I know a lot of when I was doing the food distributions and a lot of our volunteers are coming out just as volunteers, they saw miles down the road of people in line for food, and they see the issue and they see how many people rely on distributions and how much food insecurity there is, and they also see these food boxes full of food that would have gone to the landfill if they didn't have that program. And so I think seeing it firsthand, it just sparks something in you, and you just can't stand back at that point, and you seek to get involved in it more. I feel automatically just from having that direct exposure to it. And so I a lot of our volunteers, they ask me for other positions, or if they can do go out to businesses themselves and things like that. So I feel I'd say to that, just do something that gives you direct exposure, and I think that'll naturally kind of get you more involved in it, and then you'll end up seeking a greater role, I guess, in the problem solving and the leadership or whatever you want to do with whatever issue you're addressing. But I think just that direct exposure is something that brings you to another level of connection with whatever you're trying to address.
So for you, seeing it, this really grew your passion, obviously. So, you want kids to get out there too, or adults, and just see what the issue is. And, it's pretty blatant, you're saying, when you get out there.
Yeah, definitely just get out there. That's the first step.
And then, you're going off to college. How does that play into, you continuing this effort? Are you going to start doing that where you go to school? Are you going to continue, to help out with, organizing things down here?
Yeah, so I'm still going to be virtually organizing. My mom's kind of going to be the boots on the ground, and I'm going to do, because a lot of the stuff we can do digitally or virtually, emails and phone calls and texts and all that, organizing is a lot easier to do it from afar, I guess. And then I'm also going to be trying to get involved with Food Rescue US Boston, and see if I can bring that a little bit to Cambridge. And then Harvard has the Food Law Policy Clinic, which is, they're the ones involved in every federal food legislation kind of effort, and they're the ones making guides for a lot of the states too. And I know when we did our bills, that was our I don't know, we had they had these guides, and we would just read them religiously. It's so helpful. And so now I'm gonna I've been kind of communicating with them, and I'm gonna try and get more involved with that policy clinic to get more involved with policy as a whole. But definitely seeing, and even on the campus, seeing what food waste they have, and if there's a way that we can do food rescuing on campus too.
And, that's interesting that you started by, reading some of this, and that's how you sort of got going in some of the policy stuff. I think, again, for other people, whether they're your age or whether they're, younger now, and they want to get in touch with sort of changing policy, what did you do to start? Did you reach out to your, your local congressman? Did you reach out to people in the city? How did you even get started doing that part?
For policy, well, I was really fortunate to be at the environmental studies program, and so my teachers kind of let me do that as my class. We didn't, they kind of let me shape the curriculum of the year to be about policy and the bills and going to Richmond and stuff. So that flexibility really helped, and to have them kind of as early mentors in this. But then having also my peers working with me on this, my classmates, really helped, because we all kind of support each other, and all of us were we had no clue what we were doing when we were going into it, and so we just kind of figured it out together. And then we reached out, just cold emailing again, to lobbyists, and the Environmental Studies program has a connection to Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and so we kind of reached out to their policy team to get their advice, and then we also just kind of made a one-pager and just cold emailed and called like literally every single like state legislator until somebody answered and said that they would patron the bill, because it was like a week. I would not recommend this, but it was like a week or two before session, and we were like that's like the final deadline for anything to be submitted, and so we just like literally emailed, called like nonstop every single person until we got like meetings and Zoom calls, and then we eventually got a couple patron offers and co-patrons, and so it just kind of built from there. And then we started working more with like the legislator that was patroning it and the co-patrons to make sure it went smoothly through like the General Assembly. But really it was just all like cold emailing, cold calling, and then also a lot of emails to like experts in the field. Like we did email a lot to the Harvard Food Law Policy Clinic, like a lot, and we got like responses back from them with really good advice on like how to move forward with this and how to approach legislators in the best way and how to craft our one-pager so that it would make an impact and they would read it. So just like things like that, I would recommend reaching out to experts like in the field, especially lobbyists and people that do this like on the daily, and then working with a peer, like a group of peers, working with teachers if you have them, and then just reaching out to legislators, just cold calling, cold emailing, and showing up to Richmond too. That works.
So if you're watching, you heard this, these are some great, really ground steps of how to get started in affecting policy change, no matter what age you are. Well, Natalia, I mean, is there anything else? I'm sure that you could even just speak to the system for 30 minutes. I mean, you obviously are such an expert in this field right now, and it seems like that is just going to continue as you sort of move into school and then whatever occurs afterwards. But I mean, is there anything else, in this space that you want people to know? I mean, do people need to call their, their congressman to have some of these policies pushed through? Like, where do they stand right now?
Yeah, I would say, like the biggest thing for me right now is like best by dates and like use by dates. All these labeling dates, they cause a lot of confusion with consumers and businesses and pretty much and even like pantries and recipient organizations. I think that's a big thing that Virginia could change. So I would say reach out to your legislator and ask them if they have an opinion on that, and if they would, I guess, have like an opinion or ideas for how we could standardize it to make it more clear about what those mean and what kinds of food needs that, and how we kind of like make sure those dates are accurate so we're not creating unnecessary waste and making sure it gets to people. And then I think also how we can incentivize like grocery stores too, to move into areas that are food apartheids. And so I think with that is like financial incentives for those, and how we can do that through policy. So, I mean, if you want to like reach out to your legislator and just like have a conversation about that, and, research it, Google it, and there's like tons of articles on that, and just, get more immersed into that. And anything helps in terms of like, so they can see that it's an issue that matters to the people too. So definitely like get involved with that.
Right. So the big message is, they want to hear the community voice,
Mm-hmm.
and you want people to be impassioned really to support these efforts and what matters to these cities, especially in Hampton Roads.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even if it's not like food related, anything you're passionate about, just reach out and make sure that your voice is heard, because that is the only way that's getting represented like in our government and through policy, and even on the community level too. Like get involved and have a voice with community organizations, with your local businesses, anybody. So yeah, just make sure you're talking, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Natalia, thank you so much, and good luck on everything
Thank
happening. I know that it's probably a busy summer, and then good luck in all the efforts that are going forward. And as you said, I mean, this is really happening right now. They're going to go today and pick up from a farm nearby. So, thank you for what you're doing for this community, and then good luck in the next community that you're going to be on the ground in too.
Thank you so much, and it was an honor to be here.
Oh, thank you.